Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.
In 2022, 2,800 complaints submitted disputes to the Tax Dispute Review Board of the Ministry of Finance of Georgia. Companies were litigating 948 million Georgian liras in tax debt. Last year, the board made decisions on 2,600 cases, of which 739 complaints were fully and partially satisfied, 1,552 complaints were refused consideration, and 322 complaints remained unresolved. Our journalist Shota Tkeshelashvili spoke to Gela Barshovi, the founder of the tax consulting company TP Solution, and talked about the nature of proceedings in the Disputes Council of the Ministry of Finance.
If the Georgian tax authorities impose additional taxes or sanctions on the company, how should the company act in this case?
If after a tax inspection there will be additional tax assessment, sanction assessment on the company has several options to proceed. First, initiate tax dispute process within the Ministry of Finance. Second, appeal directly before the court. Company also can, especially if the chances of winning the case is low, can apply for tax agreement to a Georgia Revenue Service. This is a system under which a company can admit its tax liability and request to grant waiver on penalty and late payment interest. And company also can pay taxes and penalties, especially this may be justifiable, strategically justifiable way if the amount is not so high, it's not proportional to the resources which needs to be sacrificed for other procedures. So according to my personal experience, because I'm involved in tax dispute resolution process for a long time, I'm supporting companies in this process. I can say that in most cases, the most justifiable way is to proceed, start with appealing to the Minister of Finance, to the system of Minister of Finance, because first of all, it takes less time than a court takes. Then you do not need to appellation fee. And it makes sense to make appellation if a company has arguments for it. It's not formalistic tax dispute process. The statistic shows that it's possible to win the case if a company finds arguments for itself. And importantly, if you start tax dispute process within Ministry of Finance, you still remain yourself other possibilities. So it's a court, tax agreement, and paying taxes.
Yes. And what are the different stages and procedures in the system of Ministry of Finance of tax disputes?
So there are two instances, two steps within Ministry of Finance. First instance is Tax Dispute Department of a Georgia Revenue Service. Second instance is Tax Dispute Council of a Ministry of Finance. So when the tax inspection is ended, especially with negative results, the Tax Audit Act and related documents are issued. We have 30 calendar days after receipt of those documents to appeal in the first instance. And after first instance accepts our appellation, they call the representative of a company for the discussion. And the discussion can take place offline or online. And sometimes tax dispute council make decision without attending taxpayer, without calling the taxpayer in the discussion. So after the discussion, they issue written decision which can be either fully accepted as appellation, fully rejection of appellation, or partly accepted as appellation. In practice, partly accepted as appellation is in most cases it's such a decision. So partly accepted as appellation means that tax dispute first instance gives directive to the audit department tax inspectors who made the tax assessment on the company. They give directive and say, please evaluate the case again. If you find enough reasons, please recalculate. So the directive is quite broad and general. That's why sometimes the audit department decides not to recalculate. In this case, we have options. So first, to appeal the decision partly accepted in a second instance because it was not fully accepted of our appellation, and also appeal the conclusion recalculation, so wrong execution of a decision of a first instance. So within one system, in about one case, we are proceeding in two lines of tax dispute. First line is the appealing the Audit Act and then decision of a first instance. Second line is appealing the wrong execution of a decision. Yes.
And based on your experience, what can you recommend to companies planning to initiate tax disputes?
Yes, so it's very important to analyze the case before you start the process of tax dispute. It's important that the case is analyzed in depth and objectively, so that the chances of winning case is really objectively assessed. Okay, depending on the chances company have, sometimes may be better to directly apply for tax agreement, right? So assessing the case correctly gives a company possibility to make the correct decision about how to proceed, right? So how to proceed, and sometimes even there is no much chances of winning the principal amount of tax, but there is rare chances of winning penalty and late payment interest, which are not less amount than a principal amount of tax. So there is a clause, so-called good faith taxpayer clause, 269 article of Georgian tax code, according to which if a taxpayer just made a mistake or it did not pay tax due to lack of knowledge, it's still possible to proceed with tax dispute, but for penalties and late payment interest. So just to sum up, it's important to correctly analyze the case, evaluate the chances, and proceed accordingly. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you, Shota.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.